The NOCLIP podcast, now with 100% less squealing. Welcome to NOCLIP. I'm Chad Porter Bridges.
And I'm Andy Kinnick.
And today, we're going to be talking about Death Stranding, which is a game that was released in 2019 and was developed by Kojima Productions. It's currently only on the PlayStation 4, but will release on the PC sometime next year. So for once, we're actually ahead of things.
Oh,
sort of.
so rare.
Yeah. And Death Stranding is probably the single most ambitious, influential, unique low roar album that I've ever heard. It's really something how much you have to go through to listen to each new track.
Yeah, I'm really glad we opened the podcast up to album reviews.
Yeah. It's like a 60-hour album. It's a long...
Yeah.
And it's an interesting choice to use the same songs in it like 2 or 3 times a piece.
Yeah.
Not actually. So, Loror did a bunch of music for this game, or potentially actually just, gave the license for their music to be used in the game. Because this game is a game where Kojima went around and just asked all of his friends to be in it. And it's very strange in a lot of ways, like almost surreal ways.
Yeah, I don't follow him on Twitter. I'm not an active Twitterer. But apparently he posts pictures of him with the people in this game all the time.
Yeah, he's a big fan of being a fan of things.
He wants you to know how many famous people he hangs out with.
Yeah.
Nana Boo Boo.
I forget what he calls them. It's like, he'll be like, these are my soul brothers, or whatever. Like, he has like a pet name for all the people that he meets, that he's friends with. And it's pretty strange. But so is Hideo Kojima himself. And this game is not an exception to that.
Yeah, I feel like this is a weird, personal interpretation, I guess. But I feel like he's not even that weird. I think he's just given the platform to do whatever he wants. And if anybody had that, they would be... Like, everyone's weird.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, that's a fair estimation of it, where it's like, yes, he's doing the things that he wants to do, or at least he is now. Like, Metal Gear was obviously something that was a passion project for him at the start, but as it picked up and became more of a series, there's an argument to be made that maybe he fell out of it a little bit. Mm-hmm. My personal interpretation of it is around Metal Gear Solid 3, because the first game and the second game in the Solid series are like pretty different thematically. It feels like he wanted to tackle a new idea. Mm-hmm. But he's been on that series for so long, so when he was like given reign to just do whatever, by just starting his own company, because that's what you do when you have a lot of money and want to do things.
Right.
It really, like, the things that he chose to bring over from the Metal Gear franchise versus the things that are new, I don't really know of anyone else in the industry who would have gone for a similar thing.
No, it's definitely unique, for sure. Like, I can't compare this to anything. You can't draw any parallels and be like, that's where this idea came from, So I'll definitely give him that.
Yeah, it's I don't know. It's strange because while this game has some hallmarks of Kojima's repertoire.
Yeah, it's mostly in the story stuff.
Yeah. But yeah, a lot of it is just feels like it's out of nowhere. And I respect that in a way. Like, we'll get into this and sort of like how we feel about the game, as we go into it, particularly mechanically, I'm sure. But the one thing that I want to kind of call out up front is that this feels like, what makes this feel so unique as a game is the fact that this is a auteur indie project that was made by a AAA studio. A studio that was developed from the beginning to be a AAA studio, regardless of whatever its ideas were, because Kojima's just used to that. He works in an environment where everything costs $1 bazillion to make. And even if it's not like, I don't know financially how this game did or will do in the future, but like, man, it feels like one of those out there ideas that somebody comes up with and puts together in like a game jam, expanded in the biggest way imaginable.
Yeah, it definitely feels like an indie concept, but in execution, obviously, it's nothing like an indie project.
Right.
But now I compare this to like a Tarantino movie where there really aren't that many because they're so expensive to make, as you touched on. There aren't that many games being made these days that have like a singular vision behind them.
Mm-hmm.
It's same thing with movies a lot of the time too. Like big, widely seen movies are usually made by like a big, powerhouse studio. Same thing, movies and games. And yeah, it's so I think this game's really important, as you were getting at. Like, I respect it a lot for being so different, and for like Sony for bankrolling this,
right,
and actually putting it out there. So yeah, I give him a lot of props for that, and this is my big overarching statement.
Yeah.
We'll get into the details.
Well, yeah, because the thing is that there aren't ever going to be a lot of games like this. Not speaking mechanically, but from its genesis. Like, there aren't going to be a lot of games where the idea comes so solely from an individual. Not all of them, I'm sure, but like a lot of what this game is Kojima's brainchild.
Mm-hmm.
And to do that in a universe where most games are made with publisher backing is just like an impossibility. So I appreciate it for that. And Kojima himself seems to fancy himself a genre creator here, as he describes this as the first Strand type game, which is a quote that people like to bring up a lot because he did say it and it's ridiculous.
Right.
But I don't think Kojima is actually giving this game as much credit as it deserves for its like genre, because I don't view this game as a new genre.
Me neither.
I view this game as like a 3D action platformer, where the focus is on the mechanical difficulty involved in moving.
Yeah, I'd compare it to like what we some of the things we said about Katamari.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this game obviously couldn't be more different than that, but it's.
I don't know.
I think JJ specifically said it. It's like traversal challenge, the game.
Right.
And that's what this is.
Well, let's be clear. JJ said that it's like pressing nipples.
Oh, he also said that. And that also seems like a thing Kojima would do.
Yeah, 100%.
But he did not do it in this game. Maybe in the future.
Yeah, maybe we'll get Katamari, Damashis.
But yeah, I kind of think of it as an open world game with a lot of stuff stripped out of it, and it's about like traversing from point A to point B, and like the challenge coming from like controlling your character optimally.
Yeah. And the reason why I say I don't think giving it a new genre identity does it any favors is because one of the things that's great about this game is the way that it takes existing mechanical things and subverts them, or like at least subverts your expectations of what it's going to be. Like, you just from the beginning of the game have an understanding of movement in games, and it immediately is like, look out for that rock on the ground that in any other game would be inconsequential set decoration.
Mm-hmm.
But you can trip on it and fall over. In this one, it's like, I've also heard people sort of, I don't know if this is being dismissive or not, call this like QWOP with a budget, but I honestly don't think it's so far off of what QWOP with like a multi-million-dollar budget would be like mechanically.
I feel like it's a bit of a stretch, to put it lightly, but I kind of see what you're getting at, because like this game is nowhere near as hard to control.
Right.
But if you kind of took the idea of what QWOP is and tried to make it into like a good marketable thing,
Mm-hmm.
I could see the comparison.
Yeah, it's an interesting beast. and I think that's what we should probably get into. So, the game itself, when you're playing, we're just absconding all story for the time being because it is complicated and doesn't really take hold until like the halfway point anyway. Uh, involves you, Norman Reedus, aka Sam Bridges, aka Sam Strand,
aka Sam Porter Bridges.
Sam Porter Bridges, walking around America as it is. Sort of. Like, very small scale America. Like, I don't think that this game's map size is even as big as, like, Skyrim or whatever.
I don't
like,
think it's even close.
Yeah, probably like half, if that. Like, and yet it's purportedly the entirety of the United States.
Yeah.
But,
I would think it was hilarious if this colors people outside of America's idea of how big America is.
They're like, how long does it take to get from Oklahoma to Texas? It's like, I don't know, like 15 minutes walking. So you walk from one side of America to the other side. Well, you take a boat over one part of it, but and you deliver packages. Delivering packages is like 90% of what this game is. And I think this is a lot of the vitriol that people take with it is that they don't find delivering packages to be exciting.
Right.
And maybe I'm not most people, but I absolutely loved that part of the game.
For me, it kind of varies based on, like, context, I guess. Because, like, it does appeal to, like, the part of your brain that likes to organize and micromanage things. Like, feels good to like get everything and then like put it on your back and then hit the triangle button to have it all pop optimally onto your suit.
Right.
And then you like have to like you plot out your little route on the map, you know, like avoiding all the enemy camps, and you're like feel smart, you know, for plotting out a good route. And then, you know, you use your little sensor and, you know, you can see all the blue patches and you try to stay on the blue, you know, and like you just try to play as optimally as you can. And it like, it occupies that part of your brain.
Yeah.
And if you're not into that, there's not a lot to like here.
Yeah. This is one of those games where, like, depending on a person's general tastes, I might think that this game would be interesting to them and I might recommend it to them, but I cannot recommend this game to anybody.
Yeah.
Like, it is impossible to know. You would have to be very intimate with a person before you know that they will enjoy the content of this actual game, because it's so unusual that so much of your time is spent in like such a not passive necessarily, but like more passive than most games.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's a really contemplative game.
Yeah, I think the time factor is a big part of it, because I think a lot larger percentage of people could appreciate what the game's trying to do on like a smaller scale, like first, like, you know, crop of missions or whatever. But having to spend so much time just kind of running around, yeah, that doesn't have like a widespread appeal, I wouldn't think.
Yeah. And I don't know, it's weird because people say that it's like boring, and also people have called it a walking simulator, which cracks me up because like this is so much more of an actual walking simulator
Right.
than games that we call a walking simulator are. But like, it's not active in the way that there's action happening. It's active in the way that you do have to be thinking all the time about what it is you're doing in order to transport your packages safely.
Yeah.
And not only that, but the mechanical elements of it are really kind of hard to get a handle on. And then on top of that, the game tends to get easier as it goes on.
Yeah.
So you get severely, like, you get this idea of, like, how tedious this game is going to be from the beginning. And then it actually gets much better further on, like, not all the way through, and we'll get to that, but, like, mechanically it really ramps up and sets up everything pretty well. And people have to get over like a 5-hour long hump to get there.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's just gonna, like, people just frisbee the disc across the street before they get to what's good.
Yeah, like I said after the first couple of hours that I had played the first couple of hours, and I'm not sure how I feel about the game. And it's a lot of that is because, as you said, it's so different from anything that you've probably played. And yeah, it doesn't do a great job, I think, of pacing out all the different upgrades and things, because like I feel like they throw the bike at you decently early, and then it can be really discouraging to use the bike because you just crash into rocks and stuff, and you're like, well, I guess I'll walk.
Yeah.
And it kind of and like you don't really grasp the use of everything right away, and I think that can kind of be like a turnoff where people feel like they're getting all this stuff and none of it feels that useful because they don't understand the game yet.
Yeah.
Et cetera, et cetera. But before we get too far away from it, I feel like this game is immersive in the way that I've heard people talk about The Witcher, where a lot of the systems in that kind of get you in the mindset of being a Witcher, where like you can take a contract, go buy a book about that monster, actually sit there and read it, buy the things that it says are good against it in that book from a shop, apply them to your weapons, and then go and hunt it.
Right.
And like you can really get into that job. And this game does a similar thing where like it really gets you thinking like the character, like you really feel like a delivery boy.
Which is true. And given that also, I feel like this game it's harder to avoid that than it is in The Witcher.
Yeah, you can completely ignore that.
Right. You shouldn't, because in The Witcher it becomes
cool.
it becomes a lot less like neat in that way. But you can't really avoid it in this game because just trying to do everything without thinking about it is going to end in failure most of the time. And I think this game fights back really hard against people who don't take it at face value. I think that if you're like, well, haha, I'll just run up this mountain like it's Skyrim, the game just goes like, fuck you, and you roll down the mountain and destroy all your cargo. You just float down the river and end up like miles away from where you're trying to be. And it's like a really significant setback most of the time. I don't know, it's just like
Yeah, it really makes you pay attention to it in a way that I think a lot of people don't. Like, if you're someone who's really into like GTA and kind of want to like sandbox and goof around, this game doesn't really let you do that. You can kind of Skyrim along mountains later in the game once you like are more comfortable with it, but you can't just like run willy-nilly wherever you want.
Yeah, you can't just like mash the jump button.
No, that will end in you falling on your face. Like, they specifically programmed it to make you fall if you mash the climb button too much.
Yeah, it's very funny. I don't know, because like it doesn't seem like, I think people would look at this game and see something that I would absolutely hate, because it's a lot of like just going from place to place.
Yeah, but someone who really knows you
yes
would know that it's the focus of the game that makes it work for you.
The focus and the checklistiness of it, like it appeals to the same sort of, this is going to sound very strange, I think, but it appeals to the same parts of me that really enjoy Monster Hunter. Like games that are long, but they're long because you can just sort of like set goals for yourself and then just do them and apply what you know and try and get better, set your equipment up correctly. Like that kind of shit really like gets me going.
I was thinking about this while playing, and you can tell me if I'm correct or not. But I was thinking like a version of this game that had more of the combat in it, you would grow to like hate the traversal parts, because if the game was pushing the combat as more of the focus of it.
Yeah, you're correct. In fact, I mentioned, I don't know to who, I don't know if it was, you were actually there, when I watched the second and final trailer that I watched for this game before playing it, which is the one where it introduced that Guillermo del Toro, which I want to clear up a misconception that I don't know if is widely held, but was held by me for several hours. Guillermo del Toro does not actually play Deadman. He motion captured Deadman, and then another guy does his voice, which I didn't realize. But listening to Guillermo del Toro, it makes a little bit more sense because he is like not fluent in English,
right,
in the way that the guy who plays Deadman actually is. So I want to congratulate that dude for doing a super good job.
Yeah.
But anyway, that trailer is the one, the World War II segment of this game, and which we'll get to. If you haven't played the game, that probably is very confusing. We'll clear it all up. Don't worry. We won't clear it up. He's like against a brick bridge, and there's soldiers walking above him in like a tank. And I remember seeing that and being like, "Oh man, there's guns in this game," because I was all excited about the concept of this game being like a horror game, because it was coming off the back of Silent Hills.
Yeah,
nobody really knew what the game was actually about. The weird baby in a pod imagery is creepy and strange.
Yeah,
Guillermo del Toro being involved is a big deal for me. And like all of these things like sort of coalesced, and then like the guns, I was like, now I don't know how I feel. Maybe it's just enemies. Do you play as Guillermo del Toro? I'm confused. And so eventually we got the game, and I'm actually fairly satisfied with the amount of combat that's in it.
Yeah, I like that it's passive as well, or more passive.
Defensive would probably be a good way of putting it.
Yeah, that's the word. But like you get actual guns later, and then like they specifically come over your little cufflinks and are like, "Hey, don't use those to kill people." I don't know what happens if you do, but because I never tried it, but because I'm a good boy.
Yeah, I too am a good boy. However, I do know what does happen because I've seen people do it online. Mm-hmm. Basically, I mean, they talk about void outs and shit. They actually
causes a void out.
It actually does cause a void out, and it takes time in game as well. You can like take their bodies.
Does it persist?
Yeah, like it over. What do you mean? I guess
like after you cause it, does it stay there?
No, if you cause a void out, it does like a game over. So you have to actually, if you kill someone, you have to actually dispose of the body, either in an incinerator or by throwing it in the lake. So it's pretty weird that is a thing. But yeah, that is what happens if you shoot someone to death with a gun. But they do also give you things that are functionally identical to guns and say, go ahead and shoot people with this. It's rubber bullets.
Now, I loved the, what is it called? The Bola gun?
Bola gun is great.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool to use.
Yeah, I was actually, because that's what I was kind of going for in this, is the first time that you encounter mules in the game, how did you, like, even take to that?
Oh, I fucking hated it.
Dude, samesies.
Because it feels like it's specifically designed to do this, where you roll in and you think like you're like you got a good path, you don't see anybody, and then you trip the alarm, and then there's like all of a sudden there are like 5 dudes on top of you, and they just shock you with their little harpoon things, and take all your shit. And then I tried several times to get it back, and then eventually succeeded with a stealth approach and running in there and grabbing my shit and running away. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that was really frustrating and took me probably 8 tries to get my shit back.
Yeah,
because you don't have any options other than sneaking around, really.
Yeah, you have sneak and you have just punch everyone to death, which is not as easy as it maybe could have been at that point in the game. Mm-hmm. I think maybe if they had toned those enemies down a little bit, it would have been a little bit more... I mean, they are toned down because like other guys block, and the first ones you encounter don't really. I forgot you could punch when I went in, and so I was trying to do the strand parry and was doing a really bad job of it. My eventual solution was to request sets of medals from the distro center, and then just carry them in my hands and flail them at people.
Nice.
Which works pretty well. But it's really weird that they like the combat is so, I mean, maybe it's not weird thinking about it, but like the combat is so unsatisfying to perform that it makes you want to avoid it until they give you the tools to
Yeah.
actually do it. And I think that thematically makes a lot of sense. Like
Yeah,
you are a porter, not a punch guy.
they could have made it easier because there is a system where if you hit I think it's the square button while running, you'll kind of tackle a guy, like you'll shoulder him. They could have made that easier to like do because it has like a weird halt on your movement and stuff. Like they had to gone like a route where you could like keep moving and kind of throw dudes off, and kind of make it more about like avoiding people. I feel like something like that would work better than having to like kind of stop and punch dudes.
So do it, yeah, like a fullback,
Yeah.
like just try and keep people.
Yeah,
off
like a
of
football
you.
player,
Yeah.
exactly. The stiff arm.
Yeah, just get them.
Yeah.
Madden 2019 Stranding. That would be, I think, optimal because like a lot of the time late game, I would just get in a truck and I would just run people over. And then,
Yeah, just get on a bike and just zip by everybody.
yeah, because that's really just the way to go. There are a couple of situations where they make it hard to do, and there are also times where you actually have to go into camps.
Yeah. Now, I was pretty stubborn and would always find a way that I could just run past the camp without much trouble.
What about in, like, recovery missions, though?
I feel like after Chapter 3, there was only one mission I can remember where you had to actually go into a camp, and by then I snuck up on the camp, shot the target who had the cargo with the bola gun. I managed to successfully nullify their sensor, stealthed on in and grabbed it and ran away. Super skillful play by me.
Expert play. Is this the camera one?
Yeah, the camera one.
Okay.
All the ones in Chapter 3 I kind of struggled pretty hard with, though.
Yeah.
Because I didn't quite grasp all my abilities yet.
I mean, I will admit that in the camera one, because that's not at all what I did in the camera one.
Yeah.
I stealth killed one guy in a field, and then I had just recently been given all of these rubber bullet guns, and I
Right.
was feeling kind of giddy to try them out. So I definitely did just sort of mow down that whole camp from like an embankment across a small stream.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think your play is the correct one. I think is the more engaging version.
Yeah.
In a lot of games like this, where your options are like stealth or a direct approach, and this is part of what this game borrows from like Metal Gear Solid 5's design, the stealth approach is always more engaging and more fun, and I tried to stick to that as much as I could. But
It was clever, I thought, that the amount of cargo you have on your back actually determines how well you can hide.
Right.
It's like a nice layering of gameplay concepts there.
yeah, it's because if you bring in enough guns to murder everyone in
You
the camp,
probably can't hide.
exactly, yeah. It's good thinking most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Though I will say they go a little bit out of their way to make some of the cargo a little bit silly. Like a climbing anchor is like a whole briefcase that you have to carry.
Yeah.
It's very strange like that, but you do what you can do. Otherwise, they couldn't justify you not being able to carry like 30,000 climbing anchors if you're able to carry like a 50-gallon drum on your back. It's like, well, why not?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Let's see. I want to like the sentence that floated stupidly into my gray matter was, do you want to talk about cargo? But that's a really that's a really weird question, and I don't think fully gets across what I'm actually curious about. It's more like the actual delivery missions often involve you carrying like a huge amount of stuff around, and when you lose stamina and stuff, it's supposed to take like a larger toll on your ability to move around freely. And I'm wondering how much that actually stopped you from just carrying like your maximum carrying capacity at all times?
Uh, it depended on what part of the game I was at, but I did that a lot earlier on.
Mm-hmm.
Like it would just be like as much shit on me as I could manage, and then just holding R2 and L2 the whole time as I walked. It's like slow and steady.
Slow and steady was the
Sam Turtle Bridges making his way across America.
Well, one thing that I have to like commend you on is I walked in while you were playing a while ago, and you had cargo on one of the floating carriers.
Yeah, the dollies.
Which is something I did like once ever.
See,
it was a mistake. I should have used them more.
It was having to like do missions where like I had come into it and I already had a bunch of shit, and then I didn't want to like put it in the locker, so like I had to like load on all the actual cargo and then put everything I already had on the carrier.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, this is great. Like as long as you don't have to go up and down ladders and stuff, like it's awesome to have that.
Yeah. I was always like in my head, I just figured that if like you moved weirdly, it would like fall.
Nope.
But that's not really what it does. I did use it several times as a skateboard.
Yeah.
Which is great, and I love that functionality as a thing, but I did not use them nearly enough. My most notable floating carrier experience was I was trying to get way too much stuff from the top of a mountain to the bottom of a mountain.
Mm-hmm.
And I drove a truck pretty far down the mountain, and then it got stuck in a river, which can happen. If you drive into a river, the car's like hydraulics pump it way up,
right,
to keep it out of the water. But if you then cannot jump, so if you get stuck in a location, the truck just doesn't move anymore. So I got out of the truck, I built a mailbox, and then I put in a request for 2 floating carriers, and then I just saved the game and left. And I came back. Someone had delivered my carriers, and then I loaded everything onto them and walked the rest of the way.
Nice.
So, a very cool implementation of a thing that I didn't use nearly enough.
Yeah, like especially the mission where you have to transport Mama to the mountain knot really solidified it for me, because like because you had to carry her, so you just attach all your cargo to a carrier and you're good to go.
Wish I had thought of that. I made it all the way there pretty slowly, admittedly, but without falling or causing any damage to her or any of my other stuff that I was just carrying anyway, because fuck everything, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got to the actual building and was like, he like goes in that animation where he's like, and like pushes his hands out like a celebratory thing, and I was like walking down the ramp and I was just like like 5 feet from where I was supposed to go. It was tragic, but I was gonna be mad if that was why she died, but wasn't. Yeah, I don't know. It's good. It's fun. I like that. I like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I was really disappointed when you get to the West Coast and they're like, get to the middle of the tar or whatever. I was like, oh, I got a dolly. Can I like get on the dolly and like ride it out to the middle of the tar? And it didn't work.
No, I was a little. I don't know if I was being dense on that or not, but like I did not. It took me a minute to realize what they were going for.
I feel like I would have come up with it way quicker if someone hadn't have been a troll and put a tether or like a strand, like a thing you used to go down the mountain on the shore going into the water. So like the first thing I did was like, oh, can I just like wade into it? Is this gonna be like a cool thing? Like there's shit under the tar. So like I grab it and like I start going out into the water with it, and it doesn't do anything. So that threw me way off. So if someone was trying to mess with people, you succeeded.
Oh, I mean, yeah. If you see one of those climbing anchors on flat ground, I imagine they're probably trolling.
Yeah. But yeah, that threw me way off.
However, if you saw a ladder going up to a structure that you should definitely not climb, that was not me trolling. I just tried to climb everything in the whole game.
I left a ladder that led to nowhere that I hope fucked with somebody. Unintentionally.
Right. And the ladders are phenomenal.
Yeah, I kind of ended up forgetting they were a thing. Like, they felt really useful early, and then I found them to be, like, not as needed in, like, the second kind of area, and kind of forgot that they were a thing in the game.
No, and that's fair, honestly.
Because, like, I didn't see a lot of them in, like, the second or third chapter, because there's not a lot of ravines to be crossed, and that's when they're like, build bridges.
Right.
You know, much better than ladders.
I mean, arguably, it takes a lot longer to build the bridge.
True, but like it felt like they kept popping up in those areas where I wouldn't need a ladder.
Yeah, I felt like, so I do love the ladders. I think
no, but that they're my carrier.
Okay,
where they're a thing that I felt like I should have used more.
Yeah, I use ladders all the time for stuff going forward, but I agree that they do get a little bit obsolete. But it's largely by the zip line things. The zip lines are I think not way too good. That would be a weird thing to say. They are very good, and they give them to you in the mountain area, which is the place where they're most useful, because walking around in that is miserable.
Yeah, I never once used a zip line.
How?
I don't know. I remember getting it and feeling like this would make the game way too easy was my initial thought, and then I just never touched it. Like, I just kind of forgot about it.
I did not build a lot of things with the PCCs over the course, but I guarantee you I built about 3 times as many zip lines as I built anything else.
Yeah, I relied a lot on the all-terrain exoskeleton. I thought that made going around the mountains pretty like tolerable.
Yeah, but it's not nearly as fast.
That's true.
If you value speed.
Yeah.
I built like a whole network of them around the tops of the mountains to get from place to place. Especially around Hartman's area. Like, if you're coming from Mountain Knot going to Hartman's, it's like, it takes like a billion years. You have to go all the way around. Otherwise, there's like a sheer cliff. But it's okay if you're at Hartman's and you build a zip line, and you build a zip line down the mountain, then you can just zoop right up there. Easy peasy. No scruples. No whatever. Anyway, yeah, I think that makes the ladder a little bit obsolete, because like anything that you would normally put a ladder down, most of the time you're just flying over anyway. Regardless, I think the implementation of the tools was neat, because like both of us even used totally different sets through the whole thing. Like, I used the all-terrain skeleton when they gave it to me, but pretty quickly just went back to the extreme carrying capacity one.
The power one.
Yeah, the power skeleton, level 3, because getting like around, even with the all-terrain skeleton, like, it's so much easier, because you don't lose your balance as easily if you're pretty far under your weight limit. So I just used the power skeleton, carried everything that I could, because it limits the number of spaces you have.
Right.
And then you would still just be able to run around normally. It's good. It's good stuff.
That's super. Like, the exoskeletons were probably my favorite addition. Like, being able to just run around regularly with cargo on your back and not have to hold the triggers all the time just felt super liberating when it finally happened.
Yeah. Especially since like the cargo increase thing is based on the cargo volume, which isn't super hard to get, but is not like, you don't get it real fast. That power skeleton really helps you through the first part of the game before you actually have like real options.
So we've gone this far without mentioning BTs at all. So another wrinkle they throw into your traversal challenge is you'll come across these areas where it'll start raining, and then the rain will become, or time falling, and then that will become black, and then BTs will show up, which are like ghosts, essentially.
Yeah, it stands for beached things.
Mm.
I don't think nobody ever says it. It's in one of the diaries
Yeah.
or whatever. But yeah,
But they show up and they turn your traversal into, you have to like crouch, move slowly, use your sensor a lot so you can see where they are, and then you hold your breath when they're close so that they can't hear you, and you just kind of have to try and make it past them without being caught, essentially. Until later you get weapons so you can fight them if you want, but I never did unless it was a boss fight, personally.
that was the question that I was gonna ask. We'll get into that when you finish this.
Because I liked the stealthy traversal element of the game way better than the pointy shooty parts.
Right.
So I always opted for the stealth approach. But so that's, they give you enemies basically to contend with as you go around.
Yeah, because unlike the mules and the terrorists, the
Right.
homo demons.
Yeah, a supernatural enemy and not just a human dude.
Yeah, but you know where the human enemies are because they're marked on the map, and that's less often, though occasionally, but it's less often the case with the BTs because they just sort of come up anywhere that there is like heavy time fall, and you can memorize their locations, but it's not really worth it. My thing was when I got to the point in the game where I could kill BT bosses, I also liked stealth a lot more than the combat because shooting with an analog stick is miserable, and this game is particularly bad because it has no like aim assist, so you end up like way overcorrecting for things.
I'm glad that you say that, because every time I'm bad at a shooter, I'm like, yep, that's how this usually goes.
Yep, I am bad at these.
Yeah.
No, it is not just you. This game seemingly intentionally does not apply the same like ease of use mechanics to shooting that a lot of console shooters do. Even third-person shooters like GTA that you mentioned before has like a lock-on, which makes so you don't actually have to really aim.
Right.
And then lots of first-person shooters have aim assist, and if this does, it's pretty minimal because I found that like it was like trying to use a trackpad on a laptop to do anything. It was like, I don't know. I found it very difficult to aim in this game. But at the same time, I found it way easier most of the time to, whenever there was like significant BT presence in an area, to just let myself get grabbed. Like I would like unload my cargo, walk out into the middle of them, get grabbed, and then fight the boss because it just clears everything up.
Yeah.
And it takes less time. Your cargo takes less damage from time fall. Like if I'm being forced to spend a prolonged period of time in there, it was almost always easier for me to just kill the boss and get it over with.
Yeah, I resorted to a similar thing, although I didn't fight the boss. I would just exit the tar, which will just make everything go away.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was one boss that I killed that wasn't mandatory, like after I got the ability to, and that was it.
Yeah. Okay, so there's so much interesting shit that they did with this game, with these VTs though, that, and the bosses really are not that. The bosses have really cool designs, I think. And I like the concepts of like the environment changing, like buildings and cars bubbling up from the muck, and like the dead players who throw you shit is really cool. It gives me like a very like connectivity sort of vibe, which is what the game is largely going for, which we'll talk about on the second half.
Right.
But like just doing all that is very neat and cool, but like for the most part every boss just came down, or every mini boss came down to just throw a grenade at him, shoot him, and that's it, and then they explode, you get a whole bunch of shit. sun comes out, beautiful inverted rainbow, and et cetera, pretty neat. But the actual like the design of the enemies being like invisible, but like not really all that invisible, the footsteps that like explode off the ground when they see you and start coming for you, very tense, very cool. I love that design a lot. I don't know, I just think it's just so much cooler than the regular human enemies.
Yeah, no, and the tension is a large part of why I think I prefer the stealth approach. Like sneaking past like weird tar ghosts is way more interesting than wading through tar and shooting a grenade launcher at a big blobby whale thing.
Yeah, or a cat.
Or whatever.
Yeah, whatever else is there. Yeah, it's a little strange the way that happened. Like, I remember there's a part near, it's like right at the end of the game where you fight the penultimate like BT boss, which is the big
the
whale.
Giant whale, yeah.
Yeah. And you're going through the area leading up to that. And there's a part where, like, as far as I can tell, you can't not fight the boss. And it's two cat guys.
No, I just ran away.
You ran away from it?
Yeah.
I tried to, and then was immediately, they just like walked back up to me. We're like, hey, we're still doing this.
Yeah, if you clear the tar, it just goes away.
That normally worked, but it did not work in this situation. Then I proceeded a little bit further, and then 4 of them showed up.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, 4? Okay, I get the message. I'm not supposed to fight them. And so you go a little bit further, you get out of the tar, and then the whale comes.
Right.
Like, I was pretty much in a BT encounter for an hour. Like, it was just the whole way. And it was pretty fucking stressful. And I actually liked that a lot.
Yeah, that whole last stretch I thought was cool. I thought particularly there's a part where you kind of like crest over a hill and then you see a bunch of the like brain jellyfish things.
Oh yeah,
like just peppering this hillside, and it's like a really creepy, ominous visual.
Yeah, I kind of forgot about those. Weirdly.
Yeah, they're easy to just run past is probably why, but like just coming up on them like was a really cool moment. And then like every time you felt like you were just like out of an encounter, like you stumbled on a new one
right
on the way back there. I thought the pacing of that was pretty good.
I also love that they disable your ability to like build things, and you have to rely on what's already there. But I think the multiplayer ties into the plot enough that I don't really want to get into it right here. Other than that, like bosses wise, like how did you? Because there's some things in this game where like there are a couple of bosses, like BT bosses, that they make you fight. And then there are the unique bosses. And I that big like they put the whole narrative arc of Metal Gear Solid 2 into or mechanical arc rather of Metal Gear Solid 2 into this game, where they were like, okay, you get to the part where you kind of get what's going on, and then you fight a big giant thing, which is Metal Gear Ray, aka the giant BT, and then you do the punch 'em up boss fight, and then there's the whatever with the whale. I don't know if there's really a good like comparison there, but it's just that whole stretch of the game felt the most like Kojima's mechanical preferences coming in.
Yeah, the fight with Higgs just feels like a Metal Gear boss.
Yeah,
and I thought it was a highlight of the game.
I agree. I think the Higgs boss fight and even the big towering guy.
Well, I'm lumping that in because he's like inside of it anyway. So
true. The attack on Titan.
Yeah. So yeah, that and then fighting him on the beach. All the phases of it, I thought all of it was cool.
Yeah, super good, and like, man, I don't know. I really like the performances in this game, just overall, and I thought that what's his fuck name? Why am I blanking on
Which
this?
character?
Higgs.
Oh, I don't know who played him.
Troy Baker.
Okay.
Troy Baker did a super, super good job. And that, like, well, I think that maybe reused a couple. They didn't record quite enough lines for how long that boss fight is.
Yeah.
It's still, like, he does such a good job with the role that it ended up being interesting regardless.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about that right now, like the actors, or do you want to save that?
We could do that. What were there any other, like, we'll talk about more stuff mechanically when we talk about, like,
Right.
fights and things, but was there anything you wanted to sort of cap off with the traversal?
I feel like we didn't really talk about the timefall element.
I
The
think
only thing.
I think there could be a whole game based on the concept of timefall, and I feel like it was kind of a missed opportunity here.
Yeah, I love the concept. It's a great sci-fi concept, like story-wise.
Yeah.
I thought it was great early on, but once you get repair spray, it kind of like just doesn't matter anymore.
It's too easy to ignore.
Yeah.
Like, even on the harder difficulties, like, yeah, there are certain times when it's gonna be a problem, but if you have repair spray, then it isn't
Yeah, and
anymore.
then it gets even more not a problem when the shelters become a thing.
Yeah. It's weird. In
Yeah.
my opinion, I think,
feel like they should have limited the amount you could carry at once. Like, if they limited you to, like, 1 can per restocking, every time you go to, like, fabricate equipment, you can only make one.
Right.
Or if you already have one, you can't make any. Or something. Like, you had some kind of a restriction on it.
I mean, I honestly think they could probably have just taken repair spray out of the game. Like,
But it's really satisfying to use, though.
it's pretty satisfying to use. But consider, like, the timefall shelters, like, right around whens you get those, you are able to, like, because those spray and repair your shit.
Right.
If you could just, like, make it to that, and then that's the way that you repair by building those shelters.
Yeah.
I don't know. Obviously, I think that they were trying to compensate for something, like the fact that, like, they don't want to punish you too heavily for taking falls accidentally,
Right.
or whatever else. Like, they just want to make the game feel smoother, because they know that if it's a little bit too hard, like, I think this game is really hard, which is probably why they made it so easy.
Yeah.
Like, because there are elements of this game that could really be punishing, and they do everything in their power to make sure that it's not too punishing. Playing the game is hard. The game's difficulty itself is not, and I think that is the reasoning behind the repair spray.
Yeah.
But it does shit on timefall, which is, like, the coolest thing in the whole game. Conceptually.
Right.
Did you notice that, like, if you walk out into an area when the timefall starts, if you, like, have the camera close enough to the ground, you can see, like, flowers and plants, like, growing and withering?
I did not notice
It's
that.
very, very fucking cool.
Yeah,
They highlight it in a couple of cutscenes.
Yeah, I noticed it in cutscenes, but I really like the way it was set up. I wish there would have been, like, more of that
Yeah.
sort of thing.
Who knows, man?
Yep. Is it time for the break?
After the break.
All right.
Welcome back. Now that we've gotten the really confusing sort of, like, mechanical core of the game out of the way, let's talk about the really confusing sort of narrative properties that this game has. I think what I want to start with, and what we alluded to before the end of the last section, was sort of thing that got a lot of people talking about this game. The first trailer that came out for this game is it is a masterwork in intriguing trailer design. Whether or not people saw it and were excited about the game, which I think is really only the case if you are a Kojima sort of, like, fan, which I kind of count myself as that. I don't necessarily know that I'm, like, a diehard, but the Metal Gear franchise played a big part in my, like, youth, in my development of my tastes, and made me appreciate a lot of sort of, like, meta elements in games and things. And so I will give him credit for that 100%. Like Psycho Mantis is like one of my favorite boss fights just because I was so young when I played it the first time and it like really blew my socks off. And this game isn't entirely like that, but the first trailer sure didn't make you know what this game was like at all.
No.
It's Norman Reedus, who is just Norman Reedus, just straight up is him. A baby, on a beach, dead whales, floating figures, game's called Death Stranding. That doesn't make any sense.
No.
It is an absolute, like, mind fuck in... Like, people tried to speculate what the game was about, and I don't think anybody really nailed it. It doesn't make a ton of sense. And I don't know. I was into it. A lot of people weren't into it. I think that the use of actual actors is a big thing as well.
Yeah, I was super into that initial trailer, and it almost kind of ended up writing a check the game couldn't cash for me, because it just seemed so surreal and weird and like stereotypical Kojima stuff.
Right.
Like Kojima Unleashed the Beast.
Unleash the Beast monster.
And I feel like the game is so much, like the story of the game ended up being so much less weird than the trailers made it seem in reality.
Yeah. I actually do agree. I think that this game is going to... I didn't, like, read any criticism, really, of this game before recording this. One, because I never do, just generally... And two, because I wanted to sort of keep my own interpretation to my, like I wanted this to be my actual thoughts on how the game worked. And I feel like this game is probably going to catch flack for being weird and confusing, but it had so much potential to be weirder and more confusing.
Yeah, I feel like, and maybe I'm an outlier here, but like I really don't think the story is even that confusing.
No.
Because like I feel like the reputation Kojima has for being like weird and his storytelling comes a lot from, he really likes to focus on symbolism and parallels, and he really bogs things down with like details, but he does it in like a quirky kind of way.
Yeah.
Like with his characters, and the way it comes together ends up feeling like it's a lot more like weird shit is going on than it actually is.
Yeah.
Like when you step back even from like the Metal Gear games and this, like they're really, like the story of them isn't really that complicated.
Yeah. I think what it comes down to, and you can see it in this game, but to a lesser extent, is all of Kojima's games are about something. Like each of them have an individual sort of like narrative idea, and it's very on the nose most of the time. Like I don't think people are all that confused about the anti-war sentiments in Metal Gear 1.
Right.
And I don't think that people are probably more confused, but less than could have been about the like meta video game elements in Metal Gear 2.
Right.
And this game is about connections. It's like its whole thing is like bringing society together is an overall positive thing. People should be connected. And the game does a lot to drive that point home, and it's not ambiguous about it. Like it's very straightforward. You're creating a network as the primary element of the game. You get fucking emails all the time about people telling you, like, nobody has a negative thing to say. Everyone who sends you an email is like, Sam Bridges, the legend, the best guy that ever was.
Yeah, well, I mean, even like the main thing that you're doing, like all of the like bases are called knots, and you're tying them all together.
Exactly.
You're making a big strand across the country.
And the word strand being used like figuratively and literally constantly throughout the game. It was your character's original last name, which I don't know how names work in this game. It seems like it's your profession is always your last name.
It's your name is just a literal descriptor of what you do.
Right. Except Die Hardman, kind of. His is a metaphorical description of what he does.
Yeah.
Dead man, very literal, but like because he was Sam Strand, which
Right.
presumably was his original name, but maybe not. Maybe they took that name when Bridget became president.
Yeah, like she adopted him basically.
Yeah, and then he becomes Sam Porter Bridges because he's a porter who works for Bridges. It's like
Right.
very clear uh, in that, but like yeah, the word Strand is his last name. The word Strand is the name of the like sitting president of the game when it starts. The strands are the things that you tie your packages with, and also the thing that you use to like disable enemies.
Mm-hmm.
You use strands of your blood when you're doing shit, building things.
Mm-hmm.
The bola gun describes itself as using strands. It's like,
The list goes on. And
yeah,
on.
it goes on forever. Everything keeps like coming up, and they use the same thing. Bridges is a metaphor for connecting things as well.
Mm-hmm.
When you
You
burn
literally-
bridges, you
yeah.
cut connections.
You literally build bridges.
Yeah, like it is very clear and on the nose what it's about.
Mhm.
The confusing part, and this is true of Metal Gear as well, is the interaction between characters
Yeah.
because they're more in-depth things. But I don't think that that's really the case as much in this game.
Mm-hmm.
Because Metal Gear, you can go into this whole like conspiracy spiral where you talk about like the fucking lolly lule lo or the Patriots and they're sort of the same, a little bit different, and there's like a background conspiracy and they're controlling the populace and then building these weapons, and like some of it's metaphor, some of it isn't metaphor, and that's where it gets weird. This game is more or less just like the weird stuff is just like the supernatural stuff. Like why are Mama and Lochna the same person? It isn't really connected to the beach, which is like their main explanation for everything. They just like literally are some kind of weird chimera.
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand.
I think the Metal Gear games are a little bit more like cohesive because they're more linear games, which is better for delivering a story.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas this, the first like 2/3 of it have almost no story, and you only interact with holograms of people.
Right.
And then it picks up basically once you finish chapter 3. There's a lot more story happening. I feel like the game kind of has a few too many strands, to put it thematically to the game, where it's trying to do a few too many things, I think, and it all kind of pulls in different directions.
Yeah.
And my feelings on this game are mostly positive, but the problems I have with the game kind of stem from that, where the game's not quite as like cohesive as I would have liked. The story kind of feels like it stands independently from the game.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I kind of would have liked to see them come together a bit more.
Yeah, I think... I don't know. See, I'm of two minds here. There are two major issues that I have with this game that really knock it down for me as far as like my overall take on it. Because I am positive on this game for a lot of I think, pretty legitimate reasons. My very legitimate reasons against it, one of which we won't really get much conversation out of, which is all the text is too goddamn small. Like if you're at all visually impaired, it's impossible to read. There's a column in the deliveries thing that has a number in it, and I don't know what it says, and was never able to read it. Like getting up close to the television, I could not even tell what it was saying. Just most of the text in the game is just much too small. And that's the thing, and I think it needs to be addressed.
No, that's fair.
But it's not like a huge detractor. Or at least it's not as much of a detractor as it could have been. People who are worse off than me might have bigger issues. But my second issue is basically what you're saying. I think that the game mechanically builds until like 2/3 of the way through, and then the game actively hates you for engaging in its mechanics.
Yeah.
It's like we're not introducing anything new. The only thing that we're going to introduce is things that make traversal basically irrelevant, and then that's when the narrative really takes hold. And I think they do it in my mind, it's an intentional choice. I'm not 100% on that, but it happens when you're in the mountainous region is when the story really starts to kick into gear.
Uh-huh.
And the mountainous region is the place where you're least likely to want to take on extra tasks because it's misery to get around in for the most part. And if you skip them, like I did in that part of the game where I was like, I'm not doing all these extra missions for these people, then what ends up happening is you just sort of like blaze through the rest of the story really quickly, and because that's when the story picks up, that's why I feel like it's intentional. If it wasn't intentional and they wanted you to enjoy the mechanics at that point, then they fucked up. But if it is, then I think they're okay.
Yeah, it feels like the game gets split into two distinct parts for me, because once you hit the beach, the West Coast, I mean,
the literal beach.
Yeah, the actual beach that is on the coast of California, not Carolina.
Different coast.
Yes. But so once you hit California, it's basically the game play like completely changes. Like you got parts where you go to Cliff's Beach and it's like a third-person shooter level. Mm-hmm. And you have the boss fight with Higgs, which is all combat stuff. You got to go back across the country, and you don't deliver any cargo. It's just like run from here to there as fast as you can.
Right. I delivered all kinds of cargo in that part.
Oh, yeah? I thought the chiral network shut down. There's no cargo to get.
Yeah, you can still pick up orders from places. So I did.
I thought the game totally implied that there wasn't anything.
Yeah. No, just before you get to your last point there, the part that I was actually warning you about a couple of weeks ago was during that mission, which generally speaking I love. I like the idea of going from one coast to the other without being able to build stuff. Really puts that's like the capper on the traversal part of the game, and they do it well. But I picked up it was 250 kilograms of shit to carry from where I was to Port Knot City, and then stopped somewhere else, delivered a little bit of stuff, and then picked up another 200 and loaded it all into a truck and had a huge amount of shit, and was going there, and then the supercell takes you. It puts you on the other side of the lake, and I was like, all right, go menu, cancel all these orders. I was right there. I could have delivered it.
That's so weird. I could have swore the game explicitly stated that you couldn't do deliveries in that part.
They do say explicitly no cargo to be delivered.
Yeah,
this
just
time you're the cargo. Yeah. So it does give that impression, which is why I checked in the first place.
I didn't even rest at any actual places. I only stopped at the little bases that you can make.
Oh yeah.
On the way back. But
But you do that.
Yeah, so you do there's no, I guess there can be, but there really isn't much of any delivery in that part. And I skipped over it, but there's the whole part where you go to the beach after you fight Higgs, and there's a bunch of other stuff where you're running around on the beach. Mm-hmm. And then you fight some more bosses, the big whale and all that, and and it's the whole delivery traversal part of the game is basically dropped once the story is in full swing. And so they don't feel like they really gel.
Yeah.
It's not as bad as it could have been, because a lot of the boss mechanics and things incorporate the movement into them, you're jumping around on buildings that come out of the tar and stuff.
Yeah.
So there's something there, but it just kind of feels like two different parts that don't click together.
Yeah, no, and I don't disagree. I think the saving grace, as far as I'm concerned, for that split that happens, basically at that very moment, is that the game's really goddamn long.
It is very long.
Yeah, I mean, some people would probably disagree with that, but if you're a listener of this podcast, you probably know we don't generally play games that are 50 to 60 hours. Mm-hmm. And so to me, it just felt like there was a whole game, and then there was the sequel to that game, Death Stranding 2, where they explain what happened in Death Stranding 1, ties up all the loose ends. And that is kind of how I experienced it as well, because the way that I played this game was big chunks, and it got to a point where like I think I turned the game off like right before the trek back, and I played through the whole rest of the game in one sitting from that point. It was like 6 hours, but like just doing all of that was it just felt like a totally different experience.
Yep.
But the narrative itself, as we were kind of getting to with the other discussion, is, I think, decent, at least. I think there are parts of it, some of the motivations for characters feel a little bit like they're just doing it to do it.
Yeah, there's some underdeveloped parts. Like, Higgs had almost no presence in the story whatsoever. It felt, because like Cliff feels like he's set up to be the antagonist,
Right.
but then it's Higgs who maybe showed up 3 times and said like 5 words to you before you fight him.
Yeah.
Ends up getting like the final boss treatment. So that felt kind of weird.
Yeah.
Because they end up like subverting what you expected, and Cliff isn't a bad guy.
Right.
But it just felt weird that there wasn't more of like a confrontation with him and his last little war, Vietnam, third-person shooty level.
Yeah, I felt like the natural conclusion to the Unger part of the game would probably have been like a actual boss fight with him on Amelie's Beach, like in that unfamiliar space, as opposed to in the wartime, which is the only times that you fight him. Though you do fight him 3 times, which is, I think, one more time than you fight Higgs. Higgs has one where you fight a BT, and then you fight him actually twice.
Yeah. 3 times.
Is it 3?
Yeah, it's part where he's shooting you. Well, he's in the Titan. Then there's part where he shoots you. You run around and you throw briefcases at him.
And then there's the fighting game.
And then there's the part where he has the knife.
Right.
And
I consider that one fight, but I can see what you're saying.
I think those are different phases.
True.
So he's got like a 4-phase boss fight.
Yeah, and it gives it like a weird sort of pacing where the final boss, so to speak, is kind of that big whale.
Yeah.
Because you don't actually do any other combat after that. It's like you do that, then you go to the beach, then you do the narrative finale of the game, and then you end the game, and then you do the sad walk to the incinerator.
Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, I don't dislike that so much, like, because I'm not one for boss fights generally, unless they're like really go above and beyond. And the whale super didn't do that.
No,
it was
like the cap to the BT part of the game.
But not even, though, because, like...
Or it's supposed to be.
Yeah. Like, it's cool. It looks good.
Yeah.
I like the big whale flying around. I like things that are underwater. I like it even more, apparently, when things that are underwater fly around in the sky, because that's cool.
Yeah. You can shoot rockets at it.
shoot big rockets at it. But, like, it had, like, one threatening attack.
Yeah, like the big laser.
Yeah. Laser whale was definitely a thing. But after that, it's just it's a narrative conclusion, and I don't know. I honestly don't know how I feel about the ending of this game.
I think it's satisfying as a narrative, at least. Like the end part that we've been discussing here. I think there's a lot, or maybe not a lot, but there's definitely something left to be desired with all the characters, and like their stories that were explored in their chapters felt like they needed more, you know? Because like I thought like Hartman, super fucking interesting concept, and like he was like, the actor was really good. The performance, you know, like I was interested in that character, and then it's just kind of like his little contained thing that explains what's up with him, and then that's it.
Yeah. The parts of the game that actually took place in his lab I thought were really cool. I felt like Hartman's character conceptually was a little bit of a mess, because they like jammed everything they possibly could into it. It was like,
but yeah, that's the kind of weird shit that I want when I play a Kojima game.
This is true, yeah. Hartman, he feels like they jammed everything that they could into him, but the end result was pretty cool. But at the same time, like, I don't know if it would have been more satisfying if he had like actually found his family.
No, I didn't want that, but I just feel like you could have done more with the characters.
Right.
And he felt like an especially big missed opportunity because he comes in so late.
Yeah. And he's only conscious for 21 minutes at a time. And I felt like reading some of his interview logs, I feel like those took me longer than 21 minutes to read. So
yeah, I was like, why not do every hour?
Yeah.
You know, why 21 minutes?
I'm sure there's a reason.
Yeah, they gave a little explanation. I don't know if there's more, where he said, like, most essential functions in life can be done in 21 minutes.
Right.
So,
or is it 23?
I think it's 21.
Is it 21? I forget, because oh yeah, because it's out for 3, so it's 24 minutes. Somehow it's related, because it was
like a TV show.
Yeah, it was like the amount of time that you can do, and it's like the number of times that would happen over the course of a day, that kind of a thing. Like there's reasoning behind it, but it's a weird reasoning.
Yeah.
I don't know. He's a strange character, but like kind of a lot of them are.
Yeah.
The fact that Deadman is a Frankenstein monster,
yeah,
is kind of glossed over.
Oh yeah. Like that's like the kind of thing I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Like they're like, hey, Guillermo del Toro character is literally made from parts of other corpses, and like, you know, he's literally a Frankenstein's monster. But that's it.
Yeah.
You know, it's just his backstory, whatever. We're not even going to go into it.
Right. Like, you know, who did it? Why did they do it?
Yeah, like, they don't explore the characters that much.
And it's weird because they even give him narrative importance, not just because he's, like, the leading BB research dude in your team, but also he describes himself that, like, because he's made up of the parts of other people, he doesn't have a beach. He doesn't have a connection to the other side.
Yep, and that seems significant.
Exactly. And, like, they use it, I think, a little bit in the ending, if I'm not mistaken.
Because he's the one who goes in and gets him.
Right. And I assume that that's, like, the payoff for that.
Yeah.
But it feels like there should be so much more payoff.
Yeah.
Like, he's, like, a superhuman in the context of the world that they've set up. But they don't do much with it.
Yeah.
Mama, I think, does get explored pretty well.
Yeah, that was a highlight. I thought Mama was a cool character. Like, I think they did a good job of introducing her as a hologram early enough, and then taking just long enough to actually meet her in the game world, and then so like her story felt better paced and placed into the game than a lot of the others.
Yeah, and like her quirk of having like a literal BT child.
Baby.
Yeah.
That one worked well. It felt the most like a literal episode, as they're called.
Right.
Like, it felt like a story that you're introduced to, it's told and has resolution all in the space, you know, that it takes place in the game, and like none of the others really do that.
Yes. I could not possibly, like, I think between her and probably Fragile are the most, like, fleshed out characters in the game. Like, not even, because Die Hardman feels like the character that should be fleshed out and just isn't, because he's the one who has the mystery built up around him.
Yeah.
But he just doesn't get that, really.
No.
Unger sort of does, but at the same time he's kind of one note for what he is.
Yeah.
Mama, super well fleshed out, is a 3-dimensional character, seems good. Fragile, less 3-dimensional, I think. She's, like, driven by revenge is kind of her story, but
she feels like sci-fi woman.
Yeah.
You know, like she has this, like, kind of, like, she feels like a Star Trek alien. Like, she has this very monotone way of speaking, and she kind of doesn't feel human.
Right. Like a... Yeah, no, I think Star Trek comparison's probably good there. She's got...
Like, she almost kind of... This is, like, a stretch, but it kind of illustrates what I'm getting at. But, like, almost kind of feels like C-3PO. Mm-hmm. She feels, like, kind of very, like, calm and measured and diplomatic. You could imagine her moving like C-3PO when she talks. You know what I mean? Like, imagine her voice, and then imagine her doing that while she talks, and it fits.
Yeah. I don't know, and that's not even necessarily... I mean, it is definitely somewhat of a slight to the performance, because it is...
I mean, that might have been what they were going for.
Yeah, like, I don't necessarily know. But yeah, I think it's like... I don't know. I feel like people who have more interpretation on this might have something like, I don't know if she's supposed to be like, she's like that because she's intentionally repressing.
Yeah. It feels like an intentional stylistic choice to me, but I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like with a Kojima game, it is really up in the air more so than it would normally be. But no, I mean, I liked Fragile as a character a lot. The reveal that like under her clothes she's got like
She's old.
she's old
Yeah.
is cool.
Also really emphasizes how little like importance Timefall gets given, because like it seems to me like she should be just dead, not like
Yeah, it depends. They didn't. They kind of glossed over exactly how long she was in it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you would think that it's been 10 years since that happened to her or something.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking like in the
So her body's probably like 90 years old now.
yeah, roughly about that. And like in the scene where they introduce her and they're in the cave, and like a one single droplet of Timefall hits Sam's hair and it turns gray.
Yeah.
Like this seems like it's aging kind of a lot. Maybe he just is gonna gray early, but I don't know if the Timefall really distinguishes.
Yeah, it's a little inconsistent.
Yeah, once again, I feel like Timefall is a concept that deserved a little bit more time than it was given. But yeah, Fragile Story is cool. I think that it could have been fleshed out more. Like a lot of these could have been, but they were working with sort of an ensemble here, and it's just weird how much more some of them had than others.
Yeah. It comes back to like what I started out saying is it feels like there's too many strands and they're pulling in too many different directions. Like there's like the priorities are kind of like not mismanaged, but they're like uneven.
Right. Because they don't want to give, I guess, one character more important, or they do want to give one character more importance than the others.
Yeah, it's like instead of cutting things, they just kind of tried to polish everything that was there as much as they could, and it's kind of uneven.
Yeah. So I want to, since we'll come back to one particularly important character in a second, but the dialogue in the game, I know, has been sort of blasted for being a little bit like melodramatic and hokey, and I can kind of get behind that, but maybe I'm just fucking used to it.
Yeah.
Because there were very few lines that I noticed being particularly weird and out of place.
I think a lot of the interactions with the hologram people felt kind of like that.
Yeah.
Stuff in cutscenes I didn't think was that bad.
Mm-hmm.
Personally. Like Conan O'Brien shows up and it's really weird. And he just kind of feels like he's just saying the lines.
I feel like I got the opposite impression. I felt like Conan wrote those lines.
I mean, it feels like it could have just been him making some stuff
just
up.
like improv.
Yeah. But like, I don't know. There were some things that like actual gameplay things that he explained, like with the otter hood.
Right.
And it was just like, man, yep, that's just Conan reading off a sheet of paper. Yeah. And I think a lot of the hologram people in the different bases or whatever you want to call them, the knots, felt that way.
Yeah, especially like because some of these people are not actors. Like some of the characters here are being portrayed by like, I mean, they were motion captured. Not all of them voiced by, but like. Edgar Wright, who's a director, not necessarily an actor, probably spent a lot of time around actors,
right.
Probably picked some stuff up, is a character in this game. Junji Ito is an artist and a writer. Doesn't seem like he would know a whole lot about acting. Also definitely was dubbed because I don't think he even speaks English.
Right.
A really strange like selection of people, so you can't expect everybody to do really well. I guess it's just like some of the parts where like, all right, we're going to come back to that very important character, and I'm going to tie it in here, because why doesn't Sam ever say anything to anybody? It's so weird and bothered me through the whole game.
Silent protagonist.
But he isn't. Like, he's not supposed to be.
I feel like there's a reason a lot of games use silent protagonists, and it's this exact reason, because in gameplay, it like non-cutscene kind of interactions, you would end up with so much dialogue for the main character.
That is true. And like I
So
guess
you just don't have them say anything, have it be implied.
I guess like Norman Reedus spent like 2 years on the motion capture for this game.
I believe it.
Yeah, so like it makes some amount of sense, but like it just like there are places where I feel like he should have lines of dialogue.
Yeah.
Where instead he just stares off into nothing. Even in cutscenes, there are times when he just like doesn't say anything.
Yeah, I feel like they kind of want to make him like the strong loner type,
Right.
like the wanderer type that he's supposed to be, literally wandering America.
Yeah.
But no, it is a bit weird.
And he's supposed to be detached, and he's supposed to he like has a fear of human contact, like that's written into his character. But human contact and expressing opinions about things that are important seem like they're different to me, but maybe it's emotional contact as well.
Yeah.
His is the story that I wanted to talk about here because like he does have character growth. I will give him that. It's supposed to be that at the beginning he doesn't want anything to do with it, and at the end he doesn't want anything to do with it, but he's okay with being touched. And that appears to be what it is. Like in the end, he still doesn't have love for country. That's not what he gains.
Right.
It's more just like an acknowledgement of the importance of human beings.
Yeah.
Which I think is valid, but also he loves cryptobiotes now.
Yeah.
Whereas before he thought they were gross, and now when you eat one, he's like, ooh, that's tasty.
Yep. It's a little bit weird.
Yeah. But given that he has some growth, I will go ahead and give him a pass. But the way that he behaves in the game is so outlandish and bizarre that like I feel like it almost conflicts with the whole point of him as a character, where it's like he is the delivery, like the vehicle. I almost said deliverer. That's bad because that's what he literally is. Of all of the weird meta content in the game, like where they got to like sort of play with it, where he like looks at the camera and like does weird motions and shit. And like there are times when I feel like he's talking to the player. Like if you're running carelessly and he trips and you recover, he's like, dude, like,
yeah.
He like talks to you. Like it's weird.
There are times where he'll like turn around and look at you. Like I couldn't remember exactly what triggered it, but it did seem like it was something that I was doing and he was acknowledging it.
Yeah, that's honestly what I was wondering as well, because it would happen occasionally and I'd be like, is this him looking at the camera? Is this like an environmental thing where he's supposed to check? And I would like swing the camera around and look behind me and there wouldn't be anything there. And so I kind of just assumed that it was just Sam checking out you, the player, at the time. It's a real strange thing. And like Sam acknowledges the like gaminess in his actions, but it's not in the narrative. So I don't know what to take from that.
It is weird. Like I would compare it. There's some similar things in Nier, which makes me wonder if there's some kind of a cultural element. Because, like, 2B, I know if you look up her skirt enough that she will, like, turn around and, like, swat her hand and it'll make the camera move.
Right.
So, and, like, that game also, in its narrative, has meta elements, but they're not necessarily, like, acknowledged in the gameplay. And, you know, there's, like, a similar thing going on there. But, so I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but it definitely feels very Kojima. I know that, to like want to deliver like fourth wall breaking meta things just in the gameplay.
I think the reason though why something like Psychomantis works is because it is a one-off and it's built into his character. Because the game interprets your interaction with it as Solid Snake's like mental process.
Right.
Which is why when you change the input method, even though Psychomantis himself refers to it as like the DualShock 2 in the controller port too, and
Yeah.
memory cards and stuff. He talks about Ape Escape like it's a real thing in his universe. It's still contextualized, whereas I feel like it isn't as much in Death Stranding,
Yeah.
and it feels strange at
Yeah.
times.
I'm not even really referring to like that like kind of stuff, but like more in Metal Gear, like in Metal Gear 3 where you climb the ladder and the theme music plays,
Right.
or like just the characters referencing the buttons when you're talking to them in the codec.
True, yeah.
Stuff like that, like the smaller things. Like I feel like Metal Gear has that kind of stuff too.
And this game also has Metal Gear style like title cards and non-diegetic music and stuff.
Yeah, and it introduces the characters by like saying the character name and then the actor's name underneath of it.
Yeah. And I think that stuff is done well. I think because there's even like a bit of a break in the like when a music plays, when a song plays, BB will like giggle and become happier because BB likes hearing the music. But like the music isn't literally playing, but
maybe
it's being reacted to.
Yeah.
So like there's sort of an element of that, and I think that's done well and is cool. And I think BB is actually a great character to deliver that stuff through,
because he's connected to the other side.
exactly. Like there's an element, a supernatural element to bridge babies as a thing, which makes it stranger when Norman Reedus is like, don't look at my dick.
Yeah.
It's like, kind of, I don't know.
While we're on the subject, I don't want to like gloss by this without bringing it up, but how do you feel about the practice of casting actors in a video game?
This has come up a lot since this game came out, weirdly.
Yeah, because I really dislike it personally. Okay. I just feel like it's really distracting. Like we're used to it in movies because you have to cast real people in movies to play parts outside of animated films. But video games have never had that, and now just because we can replicate someone's likeness, like it's been done a few times. This is probably the most it's ever been done, like the most prevalent it's ever been. But like it's really glaring to me. Like every time Dead Man's on the screen, I'm just like, that's Guillermo del Toro. That character just is Guillermo del Toro to me.
Yeah.
And not Dead Man, really. It's really weird, and it works better with actors like Norman Reedus, at least for me, because I don't know him from as many things. I don't watch The Walking Dead.
Right.
I've seen The Boondock Saints, but he's a lot younger in that. But so that lands a bit better when the actors aren't as well known, but like it's still weird. Like I feel like you can subconsciously tell this is based on a real person,
Yeah.
even if you aren't familiar with them.
It's like in horror movies where it's like way better when a horror movie has an unknown cast because it's easier to sort of like merge with the character and suspend your disbelief.
Yeah.
And I can see that, especially in a situation like a video game where you like your inputs affect the actual outcome of the game, so the game benefits more from you actually having a connection with the character you're playing. But I kind of like it, I'm gonna be honest. I think that it works well in a game like this because the game is itself about like I don't know, I don't think it's less important in this game to separate Dead Man and Del Toro and separate like Unger with Mads Mikkelsen, because it's like these are just it feels more cinematic. They aren't, you never fight Dead Man as a boss,
Right?
And he roller skates around and drops bombs everywhere. You do fight Unger, but he's not recognizable in gameplay because he's so small compared to when they zoom in on his face and show his crazy their tech with all of the facial rigging and animation. So I think narratively it works fine. I think it feels like a natural progression from using real like known actors as voice actors to using them just as they are. I do agree that it's distracting, and I agree that it would not work as like a consistent thing that just happens in video games forever.
Yeah.
But I think that there are places that can use it, and I wouldn't even say that this is the ideal one. I think that there are more appropriate places to do this than this game. But Kojima felt like he wanted to do it, and I don't think that it turned out badly, so I'm okay with it.
Yeah, it feels like it stems a little bit too much from the fact that Kojima like wants to make movies. Like he's gone on record as saying that he'd like to like make Hollywood movies. So I guess this is the next best thing for him.
Right.
But I don't know. I feel like for me, it never feels like it benefits the game at all. It only ever feels like a distraction.
I think
personally, but that might just be me.
My uninformed argument that could potentially make no sense is they have to spend less time designing a character and modeling it if they can just scan a human being's face and put them on it.
I mean, that's fair.
I don't know if that's like a good argument for it, but it is.
I mean, that's like a cold corporate argument.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean,
it's more efficient.
Consider if maybe this process of scanning people only had them have to be sponsored by Monster and AMC, and like there could have been like you could have been driving like a Hyundai Sonata in the game and like have advertisements for like NBA games that are updated live via the internet instead. Like that would be a corporate dystopia.
Yeah.
Currently we just have you chugging cans of Monster and shitting nearby an ad.
I don't know. It all kind of feels in the same boat to me, but
I mean, that's fair.
Like to me, seeing like Mads Mikkelsen in this game is as weird to me as seeing the American Express logo in Final Fantasy 15. Like it's just weird to me.
So yeah, that's the one thing that I guess this is going to be our point of disagreement, because I do agree that the Monster ad.
Oh yeah, I fucking hate that.
Yeah, it is terrible and feels weird and honestly seems unhealthy, the amount of Monster energy that this man consumes. Just all at once.
It's really bad for his kidneys.
Yeah, you should not do that. But I don't think that the actors are distracted, because those are people who make choices, who were asked to come in.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, obviously, whoever owns Monster, which is weird that I can't remember this now, I think it's like Pepsi Corporation, went to Kojima and said, "We'll give you X amount of money if you make your main character drink Monster out of a fucking canteen."
Right.
Like, it doesn't.
Where's the spin-off game about the guy who has to open the cans of Monster and pour them into his canteen?
He's got a funnel and just like, here you go. Well, the canteen is also magical because it just converts water into
the
monster. It's Monster Jesus.
Yeah. It's what plants crave.
It is what plants crave. Brondo. Yeah, and it's unsettling to an extent, because I don't want more of that. Like, we talked in the first half of this game about how this game, that Death Stranding feels like an auteur project done on a AAA budget, but what allowed it to, like, no one's internal vision of this game involved Sam drinking Monster.
Right.
Like, that was just a thing that happened, and now we all have to deal with it forever.
Right.
And I appreciated the time when, for however brief a period, the cans of Monster were replaced with Timefall Porter, because it just makes more sense. It's an in-universe beverage. It doesn't, like, distract, and at no point are you unleashing the beast.
Right.
It's just...
like, the way that you turn the camera, and then, like, it just has the perfect distance from the can, and you can actually read the text on the can.
Yep, you can pause the game and get all the nutrition facts.
Yep.
It is a beautifully rendered can of Monster.
Sure.
But that's little condolence for its existence. I feel like we have to move on.
Yeah. I guess while we're talking about it, what do you think of the private room as a thing?
I like it, and also I hate it. I think it is cool a couple of times. I think that doing, like, the way that they have the menu set up is neat and interactive. But by the end of the game, you just don't want to be in there. And one element of it makes me incredibly angry, and that's that Sam does not pee when he poops. Nobody does that. Literally nobody's ever done that. And that I don't know. I don't know why I have to go to the bathroom 2 times.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense physically. It also doesn't make sense from a respecting my time perspective.
Mm-hmm. I really hated that, like, it would let you drink all 3 monsters right in a row.
Yeah.
But then if you put the hat on, it puts the camera back over to Sam, and you have to pan back over to the table if you want to put the sunglasses on.
Yep. I just stopped doing it. Like, I just put them on from the menu, which is faster, but it isn't as... So I would forget to do it more often.
But it felt like a weird... Maybe this will be a me thing once again, but it felt really weird to me, like, the choice to have it... You can't actually move around it as a 3D space. Mm-hmm. That it's just like a thing where the camera's basically in the middle of the room and you pan around it. Yeah. It's like basically like a menu.
I felt like, because the choice to me, the game has menus. The game has kind of a whole lot of menus, so many menus.
Yes.
But this seemed like a choice where they had an idea for something interesting and executed on it. And I can't really fault them for that. Like, I think it is cool that they made the decision to have this one part where it just operates differently. It's user experience 2.1. They were like, we're going to go a little bit experimental with it, change the way that you work on your shit. Mm-hmm. And I think that is fine. I think it takes a little bit too long for what it actually does for you.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a nice, like, kind of contrast, I guess, to the rest of the game. Like, the fact that, like, he's, like, resting, and you also get to, like, chill for a second and do something else.
Yeah. Like, I wouldn't prefer that it get replaced by a, like, static menu that just says, like, what do you want to do? Like, I'm playing Dwarf Fortress or something.
Yeah, it stood out to me, like, because it felt like any other game made now would just have that be a 3D space that you walked around, like, the rest of the game.
Yeah. Or just, like, the character's not there, and as you, like, navigate through a menu that's, like, vertically oriented, the camera flips to where in the room it is. Mm-hmm. Like, there are lots of ways to do it that are more efficient. But it wouldn't get Norman Reedus doing that thing where he, like, stares at you and then turns and points at the...
Yeah, it's after every time he finishes showering, he winks at you.
Yeah. Good dude. Yeah. That Norman Reedus. Also kind of baffling, you can skip the whole bathroom scenes by just hitting start and skip, but the shower you have to skip 3 times.
Yep.
A little bit weird.
Very weird.
I don't know.
They just wanted you to see Norman Reedus's chiseled body.
Yeah, they're like, we spent 2 weeks fucking scanning Norman Reedus's ass, and if you don't have to look at Norman Reedus's ass for 1/100th of the time that we did, it just wouldn't be a fair trade. Yeah, I don't know. I like that they used it narratively, though. Like, I like that BB's in the pod resynchronizing with his still mother, which do we even have time to go into how weird, like, the whole concept of BBs is, where it's like babies that are born to mothers who die, and so they have a connection to the other side, and so they use them to see BTs, but, like, this one is Sam. Like, it's weird.
I feel like we have to talk about that.
We do, yes. We should probably stop talking about the private room.
Yeah. I mean, that was a pretty good summary. Yeah. Now, once again, like the time fall and, like, a handful of other things in here, great sci-fi concept. There's, like, a lot of good ideas in here. But, yeah, it's like a lot of the other stuff as well. Like, it just doesn't feel like it gets explored enough. And to go specifically into, since you brought it up, the, like, is Sam BB thing.
Right.
We already had this conversation off-cast, but it is an interesting thing to talk about, because I feel like probably around the time you get to Mountain Knot, where the story picks up, I called that was going to be a thing. You know, I was, like, guessing, like, oh, is Sam going to be BB? Don't remember exactly what put that in my head, but, like, I was like, are they the same person? And then it gets towards the end and it seems like that is the case, but then I felt like I wasn't sure if they were different entities or not. I felt like it actually ended up leaving it kind of fuzzy
Mm-hmm.
because I'm not sure. Like was saying off cast, it feels like there has to be a loop somewhere where Sam as BB ends up in this timeline and can exist at the same time that adult Sam does. And that's not explained if
Yeah.
they're supposed to be the same person.
Right. Because, all right, so my interpretation of, and this is actually where we can talk about the multiplayer stuff as
Yeah, because
well.
and I'm on the fence. Like
Yeah.
I'm not sure if they're supposed to be the same or if they're different people.
Because the game in several instances refers to there being more than one Sam. It's like the characters in the game acknowledge other Sams existing, like seeing and making deliveries to them, and the implication, I think, moderately obviously, is that this represents other people playing the game. This is why there are other structures and stuff built, even though within the game world it's kind of implied that there aren't that many porters still around, and you do run into some.
Mm-hmm.
But like people talk about it and they say like, "Oh, I definitely saw you, Sam. So like, thanks for stopping by and giving me some more shit," and all of that. And Hartman specifically makes multiple references to sort of like the many worlds theory, which I think is like borrowed for this game, but not really deeply
Mm-hmm.
explored. So there's an interpretation that I think they want you to take away that Death Stranding, irrespective of the fact that the afterlife is merging with the real world,
Mm-hmm.
totally separate from that, also, there's just like a convergence of multiple living worlds, or potentially respective of that. Honestly, I couldn't tell you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and if that is the case, and there are all these Sams, then it stands to reason that it is possible that, as the narrative sets up, Cliff Unger is Sam's dad,
Mm-hmm.
and Sam is BB-28, aka Lou, aka Louise,
Right.
aka the artist formerly known as BB-28. Uh, and it's like, I don't know why it's significant enough that they had to put it in an after credit sequence that BB is a girl,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't know if they're signaling there that it's not Sam because Sam is not a girl,
Right.
or if they're signaling that like there's been a significant enough change brought on by Sam's actions that the timelines are diverging.
Right.
I don't even know if there's like time loops happening or if everything is just happening
Yeah,
simultaneously.
because it does almost kind of feel like Sam. There might be a cyclical theme in there, like with the scene of like his fetus washing up on the beach
Right.
and stuff. But yeah, it's really not. It's really brushed over. And I even brought up it could also be like kind of a wink or a nod to like Jurassic Park, that like the gender
Yeah.
changed, life finds a way and all that.
Yeah. And there's some reference to sex in the game. Like it's pretty oblique, but like there's an article called like The Asexual World, where like people are devaluing human contact. So like the fact that Sam is himself like narratively, metaphorically hermaphroditic, and that his other infant self might also be a girl. I don't really know.
Right.
Like if that's somehow relevant. If it is, then these things are like seated in the most. This is the most like the Patriots thing in the
Yeah.
game, is that there are multiple Sams, and it makes the multiplayer really cool. I
Yeah.
love that
Yeah.
they've given a context for it, and I like that the way that's implemented. The fact that people structures show up and you can make strand contracts with them to make their stuff show up more often. If you find somebody who did like a particularly helpful move, you
Right.
can like bring them in as a buddy to see more of their stuff. but then I don't know narratively if it's supposed to imply anything, and I would have written it off as just being an excuse for how the multiplayer works.
Right.
Until that ending scene, and I wish it didn't bother me so much, but it's in such a prominent place.
Right.
Like, you don't put, it's not like at the end of like a Marvel movie, like they introduce Thanos at the end of a Marvel movie. They don't introduce like a totally unassuming, unimportant character.
Right.
They're not like, look, this is Jimmy. He bought a bike recently. Anyway, see you later. Jimmy won't return in Avengers 3. Like, it's weird. I don't know.
Yeah, definitely weird. I can't say it bothered me as much, but
yeah, this is the one thing where I have to say I have no conclusion to draw from this whatsoever.
And I don't think they want you to.
Yeah.
So.
Also, Higgs is the guy who wants pizza delivered.
Yeah?
I don't know if you caught this. It just is him, and it's very weird because you kill him and then he sends another email. So there's also multiple of him, I think.
Weird.
Or I didn't do that mission, but I guess it's possible that he had an email rigged to send after he died. I don't know.
That was one mission I didn't finish because I took that one and another one at the same time, and I wasn't used to reading like the markers on the map yet, because the one that I was supposed to do was like to retrieve something from a mule
camp,
post box or whatever they're called. And like for some reason I was like meshing the two missions in my mind, and I thought I was supposed to take the pizza there and put it in the post box. And so I ended up just like losing that cargo, and then realizing later like what happened, like why I was confused about that, and then just never did it. Like I never went back and actually delivered the pizza.
Yeah, I should, I don't know, do that mission and see what's up. Because there's like an implication that when you go back, he's unlocked the room and you can go check out his shit.
Oh, yeah?
As if that's like a thing. And I didn't really know what to expect in there. And also the game was real long, so I didn't continue playing after I finished it.
Right.
Maybe I'll do it like right now, and then we'll come back and talk about it if it's important. So I guess stay tuned. But yeah, that's what I have on the multiple Sam's theory.
Right.
I don't know if there's anything else to spin off of from that.
I don't know. It might be time to wrap it up.
That seems... we've been going for a while,
yeah.
So we could do that. Do we have BT's beached thoughts?
I guess I have mixed feelings on this game that lean positive. I did enjoy my time with it, but I think my thesis on this ended up being I think it just tries to do a few too many things that get pulled in a few too many directions, and it doesn't quite gel into as cohesive as a product that I would like personally. But I do really appreciate the game a lot. I think it's important that this game was produced and made, and it's so like being so different, and like, you know, coming from a visionary director, you know, like you just don't see a lot of that in like big budget games anymore, or maybe ever, because it takes like hundreds of people to make games. So no, yeah, I think it's fairly important, and I think this game's doing well. I'm not 100% sure on that, but it seems like it's got a lot of press. So yeah, I hope it continues to do well, and that Kojima Productions goes on to make some more weird games that kind of push boundaries.
Yeah. I think there's some... unrelated to my final thoughts, I think that there's some speculation that Kojima Productions is going to make movies now. I don't know if he's planning on making more games.
That would make total sense, but would make me sad.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm kind of like... To do my final thoughts.
Okay.
If this was Kojima's last game ever, I don't think that I would be destroyed by it. Like, this feels like a capstone to Kojima's career in some ways, where it's like, this is a game that is so different from what he was doing before that it feels like him sort of breaking free, which is a good, like, phoenix rising from the ashes version of the story of the falling out between him and Konami.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that makes some amount of sense. This game as a whole, I liked. I think it would be difficult to say whether this is like among my favorite of his games. It's up there in comparison to the other ones, but it is so different that it's hard to compare. I enjoyed the time that I spent playing the game, and when I was playing it, I usually wanted to keep playing it. And that's a good sign, because there are lots of games, even games that I liked, that I felt like I got to take breaks like every once in a while. So as an open world game, this does fulfill the requirements of making an open world game successful. I appreciate that it breaks boundaries a lot, and I appreciate that it was produced for the budget that it has, for a audience that probably really is not going to enjoy it. Like, I think the majority of people who are buying AAA games probably didn't sign up for the package delivery business. But the fact that it is so blatantly in your face, not a thing you do in video games, is what draws me to it more than anything else. With the, like, performances of famous people being an interesting novelty, and the narrative itself being sort of like almost icing on the weird mechanical cake that this game is. That's what I got.
All right.
Thank you for listening to NoClip this week.
What are we talking about next time?
Next time, we're going to be talking about The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening Switch version.
Yeah, the Switch remake.
Yeah, so not the DX, not the original Game Boy version, but the Switch remake version. That's next time.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to actually finishing the game.
I'm looking forward to actually playing it for the first time.
It was on the 3DS eShop for like $1 or something, and I played like half of it and never finished it.
Yeah, so this will be a good experience all around, I think. We return to Nintendo after a whole one game off. That's not true. It's been more than one game. Until that time, you can keep an eye out for the NoClip Awards Volume 2.
It's that time of year.
It is. We're going to be welcoming JJ back on. I say until that time, I have no idea if we're going to record and release that before or after the Link's Awakening episode. But expect it early next year. And I don't know, check out, maybe we'll ask you guys to vote on some categories or something. Get like a...
To all our actual fans in the Discord, like all 6 of you or whatever.
Bring gatekeeping back, 2020. No true NoClip fan. But yeah, so keep an eye out for that. Keep an eye out for the next episode, and NoClip Pocket releasing sometime in the next week or so. Until that time, you can get a hold of us. All of our contact information is on our website at noclippodcast.com, where you can find links to our email, our Twitter account, the Discord, all places you can get a hold of us, as well as lists of all of our episodes and links to all the places you can listen to them. I already called out listening to the Metal Gear episode at the end of the last episode. So what do we recommend for Death Stranding? Other open world games, we did Breath of the Wild. That's
Skyrim.
Yeah, it's good. Don't that's old. That's too old for me to recommend. But
man, this is difficult.
Yeah. Oh, you know what I recommend?
What?
Smashing that like button. What's up, everybody? And it's plain to see the NoClip podcast is the place to be. and I stole this flow from Run DMC, which is what makes people not want to be friends with me. My freestyle skills are pretty bad, I gotta say.